Echoes of the North unveiling Viking Britain. Welcome to our channel. Today we're diving into the intriguing world of the Vikings and their invasions of Britain. Get ready to uncover some fascinating facts about these legendary Norse warriors. We're embarking on a journey back in time to an era when the prows of longships cast long shadows over British shores. An age of fierce raids, but also of profound cultural exchange and transformation. It's a period that often gets shrouded in myth and stereotype horned helmets, which, by the way, are largely a romantic invention and unrelenting brutality. But the reality, as is often the case when we peer into the cosmos of history, is far more complex, nuanced, and frankly astonishing. You see, the story of the Vikings in Britain isn't just a tale of conquest, it's a narrative woven with threads of exploration, sophisticated maritime technology, intricate social structures, and a lasting legacy that continues to resonate in the very language we speak and the places we inhabit. These weren't just raiders, they were pioneers, traders, settlers, and artisans who left an indelible mark on the trajectory of British and indeed world history. So prepare to have your perceptions challenged and your curiosity ignited. We'll be exploring 10 surprising facets of this interaction, peeling back layers of legend to get to the historical core. From the engineering marvels of their ships to the complex societal structures they established and the very words they gifted to the English language, there's a universe of discovery awaiting us. So buckle up, because we're about to set sail into the heart of the Viking Age and its profound impact on the British Isles. It's a story of cosmic significance in human terms. The spark of invasion, Lindisfarne, 793 AD. Our journey into the Viking presence in Britain begins with an event that sent shockwaves across the Christian world, the raid on Lindisfarne Monastery in 793 AD. Now picture this, a serene, holy island, a beacon of learning and piety off the coast of Northumbria. It was a place considered sacrosanct, almost untouchable. The monks there were dedicated to prayer, scholarship, and the meticulous creation of illuminated manuscripts, preserving knowledge in a turbulent world. They represented a spiritual stronghold, a center of cultural gravity for the Anglo-Saxon kingdoms. The very idea of it being violated was at the time almost unthinkable. Then, from across the North Sea came the longships. These weren't just any visitors, they were warriors from a world with different gods, different rules, and a profound understanding of swift, brutal warfare. The attack on Lindisfarne wasn't merely a raid for plunder, though treasure was certainly taken. It was a symbolic thunderclap announcing the arrival of a new, formidable force on the European stage. The Anglo-Saxon Chronicle, a contemporary record, describes the event with horror-fierce, foreboding omens came over the land. And a little after that, the ravages of heathen men miserably destroyed God's church on Lindisfarne, with plunder and slaughter. The significance of this event cannot be overstated. It wasn't necessarily the very first Viking contact with Britain. There might have been smaller, unrecorded encounters, but Lindisfarne was different. It was high profile, it was shocking, and it was meticulously documented by the literate monastic victims and their sympathizers. This raid effectively marked the beginning of what we now call the Viking Age in Britain. It shattered the illusion of security that coastal communities, especially monasteries rich in portable wealth and often poorly defended, had enjoyed. It was a brutal awakening to a new reality. The psychological impact was immense. Imagine the fear that spread throughout the coastal regions of Britain and indeed across Western Europe. If a holy place like Lindisfarne could be so savagely attacked, where was safe? This event served as a stark warning and heralded a period of sustained Viking activity that would last for centuries. It forced a re-evaluation of defences, a shift in political priorities, and ultimately it set in motion a chain of events that would reshape the cultural and political landscape of the British Isles in ways no one at the time could have possibly foreseen. So Lindisfarne wasn't just a beginning, it was a catalyst. It demonstrated the Vikings' capability to strike deep into enemy territory, their ruthlessness, and their strategic acumen in targeting wealthy, vulnerable locations. It's a pivotal moment, a fixed point in the timeline from which much of the subsequent Viking narrative in Britain unfolds. It's like observing a supernova, a violent, brilliant event that irrevocably changes its stellar neighborhood and scatters the seeds for new formations. This raid scattered fear, but also, eventually, the seeds of a new Anglo-Scandinavian society. Beyond the blade traders, explorers, and settlers, when we hear the word Viking, the image that often springs to mind is that of a fierce warrior, axe in hand, ready for battle. And while that's certainly one facet of their identity, it's like looking at a single star and thinking you've seen the entire galaxy. The truth is, the Vikings were a remarkably multifaceted people. They were not solely defined by warfare, they were also astute traders, intrepid explorers, and crucially for the story of Britain, dedicated settlers who sought new lands and new lives. This complexity is key to understanding their lasting impact. Think about the vast networks they established. Viking traders, often the same individuals who might participate in a raid during a different season, connected Scandinavia with distant lands. They sailed down the rivers of Russia to reach Byzantium and the Abbasid Caliphate, trading furs, amber, walrus ivory, and enslaved people for silver, silk, spices, and other exotic goods. This commercial spirit wasn't abandoned when they reached Britain. Archaeological finds from Viking settlements in Britain like York, Jorvik, reveal a bustling marketplace with goods from across the known world, demonstrating their integral role in the global economy of the time. Then there's their unquenchable thirst for exploration. These were the people who, using their incredible shipbuilding technology and navigational skills, pushed the boundaries of the known world. They settled Iceland and Greenland, establishing viable, long-lasting communities in harsh, unforgiving environments. And of course, they reached the shores of North America, Vinland, centuries before Columbus. This exploratory drive wasn't separate from their activities in Britain. It was part of the same outward expansion, the same desire to find new opportunities, whether through trade, plunder, or settlement. In Britain, this translated into a significant pattern of settlement, particularly in the north and east of England, an area that would become known as the Danelaw. They weren't just hit-and-run raiders in these regions. They put down roots, farmed the land, built homes, and established communities. They intermarried with the local Anglo-Saxon population, leading to a fascinating cultural fusion. This aspect of settlement is vital. It explains why their influence on language, place names, and even DNA is still detectable in Britain today. They became part of the fabric of the land. So to truly grasp the Viking phenomenon, we must look beyond the battlefield. We must see them as agents of commerce, as pioneers charting unknown waters, and as families seeking to build new futures. It's this intricate blend of warrior, trader, explorer, and settler that makes the Viking Age so compelling and their impact on Britain so profound and enduring. They were, in essence, a dynamic force of change, driven by a complex set of motivations that went far beyond simple pillage. What's in a name? The true meaning of Viking. The term Viking itself is a fascinating linguistic artifact, one that offers a glimpse into how these people were perceived and perhaps how some of them perceived their own activities. It's a word loaded with connotations today, mostly of fearsome warriors, but where does it actually come from? When we delve into the etymology, we uncover a more nuanced story, a story that connects directly to their maritime prowess and their expeditions across the seas. It's a bit like understanding the scientific name of a species. It often reveals something fundamental about its nature or its discovery. In Old Norse, the language spoken by the Scandinavians during this period, the word Viking most likely referred to an overseas expedition, a journey of raiding or trading. A Vikinger, the masculine noun, was a person who went on such an expedition. So Viking wasn't initially an ethnic or national identifier in the way Norse or Dane or Swede was. It described an activity, an occupation, or perhaps a temporary state of being. Someone went a Viking. It was a job description, if you will, for a seaborne adventurer. Interestingly, the term could also be related to the Old Norse word vik, meaning bay or inlet. This suggests that a Vikinger might have been someone who lurked in bays and creeks, waiting to raid passing ships or coastal settlements, essentially a pirate or a sea rover. This interpretation certainly aligns with the experiences of those on the receiving end of their attacks, like the monks at Lindisfarne. For them, Viking would have undoubtedly meant raider or pirate, a harbinger of destruction and chaos. It's also important to consider that not everyone from Scandinavia during this period was a Viking in this active sense. Many were farmers, craftspeople, merchants who never went on a raid, or community members living peaceful lives in their homelands. The term specifically designated those who undertook these often perilous sea voyages for plunder, trade, or exploration. It was a label for the adventurers, the risk-takers, the ones who pushed outwards from the Scandinavian homelands into the wider world. Over time, especially in the languages of the peoples they encountered, Viking became a broader, more generalized term for Scandinavians of that era, often with negative connotations due to the violent nature of many of their interactions. But understanding its original, more specific meaning helps us appreciate the dynamic and often seasonal nature of their expeditions. It reminds us that being a Viking was, for many, a role they adopted perhaps for a part of their lives before returning to other pursuits. It's a subtle distinction, but one that enriches our understanding of this complex historical period. Chapter 4. The Longship, an engineering marvel of the ancient world. When we talk about the Vikings and their ability to project power, to explore and to trade across vast distances, we absolutely must talk about their ships. The Viking longship wasn't just a boat, it was a masterpiece of naval engineering, a technological marvel that gave them an almost unparalleled advantage on the seas and rivers of their time. Its design was a culmination of centuries of Scandinavian shipbuilding tradition, refined to an art form that was both beautiful and terrifyingly effective. It's the interstellar spacecraft of its era, enabling voyages to uncharted territories. Consider the construction. Longships were typically clinker-built, meaning the hull planks overlapped and were riveted together. This technique made the ships incredibly strong, yet surprisingly flexible, allowing them to withstand the brutal pounding of North Atlantic waves. They were long and narrow, with a shallow draft. This shallow draft was a game-changer. It meant that these formidable vessels could not only brave the open ocean, but also navigate far up shallow rivers, striking deep into inland territories that thought themselves safe from seaborne attack. This was a strategic capability few others possessed. Propulsion was another key aspect of their genius. Longships were equipped with a large square sail, which allowed for rapid travel over long distances when the wind was favorable, but crucially, they also carried oars. A typical longship might have anywhere from 20 to 60 oars, or even more for the largest warships. This dual system of sail and oar gave them incredible versatility. They could harness the wind for speed on the open sea, and then, when the wind died, or when maneuvering in tight spaces or launching surprise attacks, they could rely on manpower. The iconic dragon or serpent head that often adorned the prow of these ships wasn't just for decoration, though it certainly added to their fearsome appearance. It was a psychological weapon, designed to intimidate enemies and perhaps to ward off evil spirits or sea monsters. Imagine seeing a fleet of these vessels, prows carved into menacing beasts, appearing suddenly out of the mist or rowing silently up your river. The terror they inspired was a significant part of their effectiveness as tools of conquest and raiding. These ships were more than just transport. They were the heart of Viking culture and power. They carried warriors to battle, explorers to new lands, traders to distant markets, and settlers to new homes. The ability to build, maintain, and skillfully operate these vessels was central to Viking identity and success. The remains of excavated longships, like the Oseberg or Gokstad ships, stand today as testaments to the incredible ingenuity and craftsmanship of their builders. They truly were the key that unlocked the world for the Norse people. Chapter 5. The Danelaw, a Viking kingdom in England. The Viking impact on Britain wasn't just a series of fleeting raids. It led to a profound and lasting political and demographic shift, most notably through the establishment of the Danelaw. Now, the Danelaw wasn't a single unified Viking kingdom in the modern sense, but rather a vast territory in northern and eastern England, where Viking laws, customs, and political control held sway. Its establishment in the late 9th century, following decades of escalating conflict, marked a new phase in the Viking relationship with the Anglo-Saxons. It wasn't just about plunder anymore, it was about settlement and governance. The origins of the Danelaw can be traced to the campaigns of the Great Heathen Army, a large coalition of Viking warriors that arrived in England in 865 AD. Unlike earlier raiding parties, this army seemed intent on conquest and settlement. Over several years, they systematically overran the Anglo-Saxon kingdoms of Northumbria, East Anglia, and much of Mercia. Only Wessex, under Alfred the Great, managed to resist complete subjugation. The eventual stalemate led to treaties like the Treaty of Wedmore in 878 AD, though its exact terms are debated, which effectively partitioned England. Life within the Danelaw was a complex tapestry of Norse and Anglo-Saxon influences. Viking settlers established farms, villages and towns. They brought their own legal systems, social structures and language, which began to intermingle with those of the existing Anglo-Saxon population. Place names are a particularly strong indicator of this settlement. Towns ending in, by, like Grimsby or Derby, meaning village or farmstead in Old Norse, or Thorpe, outlying farmstead, are clear linguistic footprints of Viking presence. This wasn't a replacement of one culture by another, but a fusion. The Danelaw wasn't politically monolithic. It comprised various Viking-controlled territories, sometimes led by different jarls or kings, and its boundaries fluctuated over time due to ongoing conflicts and alliances. However, it represented a significant challenge to the Anglo-Saxon kingdoms, particularly Wessex, which gradually embarked on a long and arduous process of reconquest. This struggle for control over the Danelaw territories would dominate English politics for generations, shaping the eventual unification of England. The legacy of the Danelaw is far-reaching. It facilitated a massive influx of Scandinavian settlers, fundamentally altering the demographic makeup of northern and eastern England. It introduced new legal concepts, agricultural practices, and, as we'll see later, significantly influenced the development of the English language. Even after its formal reabsorption into the Kingdom of England, the distinct cultural heritage of the Danelaw region persisted for centuries, a testament to the deep roots the Vikings put down in English soil. It's a reminder that borders on a map are often just temporary lines over much deeper cultural currents. Chapter 6. Jorvik, the Viking transformation of York. Among the many settlements within the Danelaw, one city stands out for its prominence and the wealth of information it has yielded about Viking urban life. York, or as the Vikings called it, Jorvik. Before the Vikings arrived, the Anglo-Saxon town of Eoforvik already existed on the site of the former Roman legionary fortress of Eberacum. It was an important ecclesiastical and royal centre, but under Viking control, beginning with its capture by the Great Heathen Army in 866 AD. York was transformed into a bustling cosmopolitan hub of international trade and industry. The Vikings recognized the strategic and commercial potential of York, situated at the confluence of the rivers Ouse and Foss with good access to the North Sea. Under their rule, Jorvik became the capital of a powerful Viking kingdom that at times stretched over much of northern England. It wasn't just a military stronghold, it rapidly developed into a thriving manufacturing and commercial centre. Archaeological excavations, particularly the famous Coppergate dig in the late 1970s and early 1980s, have provided an unparalleled window into daily life in Viking Jorvik. What these excavations revealed was astonishing. Preserved in the waterlogged, oxygen-poor soil were organic materials that rarely survive, timber building foundations, leather shoes, wooden bowls, textiles, and even remnants of food. These finds paint a vivid picture of a densely populated town with well-organized streets, workshops for various crafts like metalworking, woodworking, amber and jet carving, and textile production. Jorvik wasn't a primitive outpost, it was a sophisticated urban environment, a northern counterpart to other major trading emporia of the Viking world like Hedeby or Birka. The range of goods found at Jorvik attests to its extensive trading connections: amber from the Baltic, silks from the Byzantine Empire or further east, wine from Germany, pottery from the Rhineland, and coins from the Arab world all found their way to this northern English city. This demonstrates that Jorvik wasn't an isolated Viking enclave, but a key node in a vast network that spanned continents. It was a place where cultures met and goods were exchanged, a truly international city for its time. The transformation of York into Jorvik is a powerful example of the Vikings' capacity not just for raiding, but for constructive urban development and sophisticated economic organization. They didn't just occupy, they built, they traded, they innovated. The legacy of Jorvik is still palpable in modern York, from street names to the layout of certain areas, and of course, in the Jorvik Viking Centre, which recreates the sights, sounds, and even smells of this remarkable city. It's a testament to how a place can be utterly remade, yet retain echoes of all its past inhabitants. One of the most enduring and perhaps surprising legacies of the Viking presence in Britain is woven into the very fabric of the English language we speak today. When two cultures live side by side for an extended period, as Anglo-Saxons and Norse settlers did, especially within the Danelaw, linguistic exchange is inevitable. It's like a slow cosmic collision of vocabularies where useful and resonant terms from one language get absorbed into the other. The result is that modern English is peppered with words of Old Norse origin. Think about some very common everyday words. The word sky, for instance, comes from the Old Norse sky. Before its adoption, Old English speakers would have used words like hofon, which gives us heaven, or wolken, related to welkin. Window is another fascinating example, derived from Old Norse vindoga, literally meaning wind eye, a wonderfully poetic and descriptive term. Even the pronoun they and its forms them and their are Norse borrowings, replacing earlier Old English forms. This is quite remarkable, as pronouns are fundamental parts of a language's grammar and are usually resistant to change. The influence extends across various domains of life. We find Norse words related to law and social order, like law itself, from Old Norse lag, bylaw, town law, and husband from husbandi, meaning master of the house. Many terms associated with the landscape, particularly in areas of Viking settlement, have Norse roots. Words like fell, mountain, beck, stream, and dale, valley are common in northern England, and not surprisingly, given their maritime and warrior reputation, words like berserk, ransack, and skull also trace back to Old Norse. The process of this linguistic borrowing would have been gradual, occurring through everyday interactions in the marketplace, in mixed marriages and shared communities. Old English and Old Norse were related Germanic languages, so there was enough similarity for speakers to understand each other to some extent, facilitating the adoption of words. Often a Norse word might have been adopted because it was more concise, more expressive, or simply because it became the common term in a mixed speech community. This linguistic infusion didn't just add new words, it sometimes replaced existing Old English ones or existed alongside them, creating subtle shifts in meaning. It's a testament to the depth of the cultural integration that occurred, particularly in the Danelaw. So the next time you look up at the sky, or feel a gust of wind, or even use the word happy or ugly, you're unknowingly echoing the voices of the Norse settlers who once made Britain their home. Our language is a living museum of these historical encounters. The popular image of the Viking often focuses on their weaponry and ferocity, but what about their personal appearance? How did these Norse adventurers present themselves? Contemporary accounts and archaeological finds suggest that Vikings, both men and women, paid considerable attention to their grooming and adornment. Far from being unkempt barbarians, many Vikings appear to have cultivated distinctive looks, which could include elaborate hairstyles, well-maintained beards, and intriguingly tattoos. This tells us something about their culture, their sense of identity, and perhaps even their social signaling. Let's consider hairstyles and beards. Sagas and artistic depictions, though sometimes stylized, suggest a variety of styles. Men often wore their hair long, perhaps braided, or sometimes with shaved sections, possibly in combination with well-groomed beards and moustaches. Archaeological finds of combs, tweezers, and even ear spoons made from bone, antler, or metal are common in Viking graves and settlement sites. This indicates a culture where personal hygiene and grooming were valued. Looking presentable wasn't just a matter of vanity, it could also reflect status and self-respect. The evidence for Viking tattoos is more circumstantial but compelling. The most direct, though second-hand account comes from Ahmad ibn Fadlan, an Arab traveller who encountered Rus Vikings on the Volga River in the 10th century. He described them as being tattooed from fingernails to neck with dark green or blue-black patterns. possibly resembling trees or other intricate designs. While Ibn Fadlan was describing Vikings far to the east, it's plausible that similar practices existed among those who came to Britain. Tattoos could have served multiple purposes, as tribal or familial identifiers, as symbols of rank or achievement, or as apotropaic marks to ward off evil. Beyond hair and potential tattoos, clothing and jewelry were also important. Vikings were skilled textile workers, producing woolen and linen fabrics often dyed in vibrant colors. Brooches, arm rings, necklaces and pendants made from bronze, silver and gold were common, not just as decoration but also as displays of wealth and status, and sometimes as functional items to fasten clothing. These adornments were often intricately crafted with animal motifs or geometric patterns characteristic of Viking art styles. So the Viking warrior stepping off a longship onto British shores might have presented a far more carefully constructed image than we often imagine. Think of it. Distinctive hairstyle, perhaps intricate tattoos, well-made clothing fastened with ornate brooches, and a gleaming weapon. This wasn't just about practicality, it was about projecting an identity, a sense of belonging to a proud and formidable culture. It's another layer to peel back from the stereotype, revealing a people with a keen sense of aesthetics and personal presentation, even amidst the rigors of raiding and exploration. Every great historical epoch has its turning points, moments that signify a shift, a decline, or an end. For the Viking Age in Britain, the Battle of Stamford Bridge, fought on September 25, 1066, is widely considered such a moment. It was a brutal, bloody confrontation that marked the last major Viking invasion of England, and in many ways served as a dramatic full stop to centuries of Norse military ambition in the British Isles. It's a fascinating confluence of events, a kind of grand finale before another, even more transformative invasion just weeks later. The context of 1066 is crucial. Earlier that year, the English king, Edward the Confessor, had died without a clear heir, plunging the kingdom into a succession crisis. Harold Godwinson, a powerful English earl, was crowned king. However, his claim was challenged by two formidable figures, William, Duke of Normandy, and Harald Hardrada, the King of Norway. Hardrada, whose name literally means hard ruler, was a legendary warrior, a veteran of campaigns across Scandinavia, and even as far as the Byzantine Empire, where he had served in the Varangian Guard. He believed he had a legitimate claim to the English throne. Hardrada, allied with Harold Godwinson's exiled brother Tostig, landed a large Norwegian army in northern England in September 1066. They achieved an initial victory at the Battle of Fulford near York. King Harold Godwinson, who was in the south anticipating a Norman invasion, was forced to make a rapid, grueling march north with his army. He caught the Norwegians completely by surprise at Stamford Bridge. The Vikings, reportedly confident and not expecting an immediate English response, were largely unarmoured and unprepared for a major battle. The battle itself was ferocious. According to sagas and chronicles, it raged for hours. One famous account tells of a single, giant Norwegian axeman who held the narrow bridge against the English army for a considerable time until he was finally brought down. Despite their initial disadvantage, the Vikings fought with incredible tenacity. However, the English, fueled by their forced march and the defense of their kingdom, eventually overwhelmed them. Both Harald Hardrada and Tostig were killed, and the Norwegian army was decimated. It was a catastrophic defeat for the invaders. While Stamford Bridge was a stunning victory for Harold Godwinson, it came at a terrible cost. His army was battered and exhausted, and just 3 days after the battle, William of Normandy landed his invasion force on the south coast of England. Harold had to force march his weary troops south again to confront this new threat, leading to the Battle of Hastings on October 14, 1066. Though Stamford Bridge effectively ended the major Viking threat to England, it also weakened the English forces significantly, contributing perhaps to their defeat at Hastings. It's a pivotal moment, the closing of one chapter of British history and the violent opening of another. To truly understand the Vikings, their motivations, their courage in battle, their adventurous spirit, we must explore their cosmology, the rich tapestry of beliefs that shaped their worldview. The Norse pantheon was populated by a host of powerful and often capricious gods and goddesses, giants, elves and dwarves, all inhabiting a complex, multi-layered universe centered around the great world tree Yggdrasil. This wasn't just a collection of stories, it was a framework for understanding life, death, fate, and the forces that governed the world. At the head of this pantheon was Odin, the All-Father. He was a complex deity, associated with wisdom, poetry, magic, war, and death. Odin famously sacrificed an eye for wisdom and hung himself from Yggdrasil to gain knowledge of the runes. He presided over Valhalla, the hall of slain warriors, where heroes chosen by the Valkyries would feast and prepare for Ragnarok, the apocalyptic final battle. This belief in a glorious afterlife for warriors undoubtedly fueled the famed Viking martial prowess and fearlessness in combat. Then there was Thor, Odin's son, the mighty god of thunder, armed with his hammer Mjolnir. Thor was a protector of Midgard, the realm of humans, a straightforward, powerful warrior who battled giants and other chaotic forces. He was immensely popular, a champion of order and strength. Alongside Odin and Thor, Freyja was another key deity, a goddess associated with love, fertility, beauty, and a form of magic called Seder. She also claimed half of the warriors slain in battle for her own afterlife realm, Folkvanga. These are just a few of the many figures in a vibrant mythological landscape. The Viking belief system also encompassed concepts like fate, weird, or orlog, which was seen as an inexorable force that even the gods could not escape. Sagas and poems are filled with heroes who meet their destinies with courage, even when they know the outcome will be tragic. This fatalism, combined with the promise of glory in the afterlife, created a powerful psychological impetus for daring deeds, and a certain acceptance of hardship and danger, essential for a life of raiding and exploration across treacherous seas. While Christianity gradually made inroads into Scandinavia and among Viking settlers in Britain over the centuries, this pre-Christian belief system had a profound and lasting influence on Viking culture, art, and social norms. It provided explanations for natural phenomena, a moral code, though different from Christian ethics, and a sense of cosmic order, however precarious. Understanding these beliefs helps us connect with the mindset of the people who sailed those longships and left such an indelible mark on the history of Britain and the world. It's the software that ran their cultural hardware. And there you have it, 10 surprising glimpses into the multifaceted world of the Vikings and their profound interactions with Britain. From the initial shockwaves of Lindisfarne to the establishment of Jorvik, the linguistic gifts they left us, and the echoes of their gods, it's clear that the Viking story is far richer and more complex than simple tales of plunder. They were a force of nature, yes, but also a force of culture, commerce, and settlement, reshaping the very identity of the British Isles in ways that still resonate today, like ancient starlight still reaching our eyes. We've seen how their advanced longships were not just vessels of war, but keys to unlocking new worlds for trade and exploration. We've explored how the concept of Viking itself was more of an occupation than an ethnicity, and how these seafaring adventurers established vast territories like the Danelaw, forever altering the political and cultural map. Their influence is etched into our language, our place names, and even, for some, our DNA. The universe of their impact is vast. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed learning about the Vikings, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon for more historical insights. We've only scratched the surface of this incredible era, and there are always more stories to uncover, more connections to make in the grand, sprawling narrative of human history. Join us next time as we continue to explore the fascinating corners of our shared past. See you next time.